My top 7 secrets to get more listings. Do I have your interest? Hey, everybody, Mike Ferrante here with the Mike team. We are real estate agents located in Solon, Ohio. And if you don't know where that is, we're just outside Cleveland. There's this beautiful shot of the Cleveland skyline. We serve all of Northeast Ohio, all the way down to Central Ohio. And by the way, if you're an agent listening to this, we're looking to grow the team and we have a great infrastructure. If you are an agent who maybe needs support, admin support, needs help with coaching, training, generating more business, hit me up. It's 21mike.com. Click that button at the top to schedule an appointment with me or someone on the team. You can also email me directly. Yes, the hotline is mike@21mike.com. Now, I promised you top 7 secrets for listings. I think we should get right down to it, right? Because what agent doesn't want more listings? I mean, we know it's a more efficient use of our time. We know that especially in a seller's market, listings are selling if they're priced right. That's the key, of course, right? And I'm just going to get down to business here because I've got a long list to get through, and we're going to start with number one. And the number one secret I have for you is that agents tend to forget that buyers are often sellers as well. Okay, so when you start in the business, what do you usually do? You start out working with buyers because it's easier. It's easier to answer the questions. When sellers start grilling you at their home, they're asking you questions like, how many homes have you sold? How long have you been in the business? And by the way, number 5, I'm going to get to that, how to answer those questions, because that's a secret as well. But we forget that buyers are also sellers. How many times have you seen a buyer's agent not get the listing of a home? First of all, because they didn't ask. And secondly, because oftentimes the client thinks that those are two different things. And they're not wrong. Not every agent is equipped to do both. In fact, there are teams and brokerages where agents specialize. There might be a listing specialist, a buyer specialist, a rental specialist. So we forget as agents that buyers can often be sellers. And at your open houses, this is critical. Early in my career, I got the pleasure of speaking to a really experienced agent. I'm not sure if she's still working here in Cleveland, but her name's Debbie Model. I know that her daughter, I think her name's Amanda, is still here practicing. So if you guys are listening, hi. But she was telling me some stories. And I said, Debbie, I see you're a pretty prolific listing agent. And at that time, I was doing strictly buyers, maybe second year in the business. And I said, what's your secret? How do you do it? And she said, open houses. And I said, but Debbie, that doesn't make sense to me. Open houses are for buyers, right? And she said, yes and no. Yes, you get buyers, but also buyers are sellers, and sellers come into your open house because they're scoping it out. They're thinking about selling their home. So they want to see the house down the street in their city, in their neighborhood, to kind of get an idea. Oh, if they're asking 350,000 for that house, what can I get for mine? What kind of improvements did they do? How nice does my home have to be? So remember, the neighbors are potential sellers, buyers are potential sellers. So reframe, readjust your perception, your expectation when you do open houses. Not only are you looking for buyers, but also for sellers. Okay. Secret number 2, Mike Pillow and Mike's down there in Central Ohio, Mount Vernon area. We were at an event. It was a Tom Ferry event, and it was really special because his dad, Mike Ferry, took the stage and was dropping gold nuggets on us for, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes. And Mike, feel free to chime in if you are so inclined. Otherwise, just keep listening and smiling as you think about the memories of us gazing into each other's eyes. That's a whole different story. Let's not go there. There was an exercise. We weren't just like gazing into each other's eyes. It was a whole exercise that they did. But anyway, get back to the story here. Mike Ferry's on stage, and this, I'll never forget this as long as I live. As agents, we have to stop asking yes or no questions. We have to engage with our clients and our prospects, right? So the mistake that we make is that we ask yes or no questions. So I knock on your door and say, hey, I'm having an open house. Stop by. By the way, are you thinking of making a move? That's a yes or no question. How easy is it for them to say no and close the door? Instead, what Mike Ferry said is, when are you thinking of making a move? It was magic. And like in that moment, I said, I'll never forget that. And it applies to all our questions, really. We have to stop asking yes or no questions and get people engaged. Ask more open-ended questions. What brings you in today? I'm talking about open house. Where did you come from to be here today? The answer to that question tells us so much more than the question I used to ask, which is, are you here for the open house? I still like that one because it's kind of funny. People are like, well, why do you think I'm here? And we have a good laugh over it sometimes. But what brings you in today? Where are you coming from? That tells a whole story, right? Well, we drove in from Chicago because we're here for the weekend and we have to buy a house and we're listing our house next weekend in Chicago. Oh my God, so much information there. Referral opportunity in Chicago, buyer, seller, tight timeline. I just learned so much about that buyer slash seller, which brings me to secret number three, which is motivation. So on Saturday mornings, our team practices role play. By the way, if you want to join that, just email me and I'll add you to the invite. Agent role play practice, 8:30 a.m. EST every single Saturday without fail. Unless it's a holiday. I think, Mike, what we missed maybe one or two in the 3 or 3+ years you've been around or something like that. We're like doing this every single Saturday, and that's why we're so polished. People will say, wow, you guys are really good at role play. Hey, it takes practice. So, how many times are we talking with a seller and we have to go back to that motivation? We're talking to a for sale by owner or an expired. We just had this one last weekend. The expired said, I'm not selling anymore. That's a lie. I'm being harsh. Greg Harrelson down in South Carolina, he calls it a smoke screen. They're selling. They didn't have their house on the market just to see how many strangers they could invite into their house. They're selling. I'm not selling anymore is a smokescreen. So that's when we have to revert back to motivation. So those open-ended questions and saying, hey, by the way, if your home had sold, what would you have done? Where would you have gone? Did you have some need to cash out? Are you moving somewhere? You have to be closer to grandkids. Again, it's that whole idea of motivation and how powerful that is. Because in the moment, they just want to get you off the phone. They just want to close the door. And so getting down to the motivation really gets to the heart of the matter. People like to talk about themselves. I mean, you may say I don't, but you know what? You do. The human brain, we're conditioned to respond to our name, for example. So when I say Grant, Fred, Rual, Mike, I mean, you guys, you perk up, right? We're self-centered beings. And I don't say that in a bad way. At a very base level, we're animals and our self-preservation is number one. Okay, now we've evolved and hopefully we're all compassionate, kind people who have loved ones and we care about them more than ourselves. But at the end of the day, we're still animals. We have fight or flight reflexes, for example. Fight or flight response is a real thing. And that's why we will talk about ourselves. We want what's best for us. Remember, I was just looking at a thumbnail. I'll get to you here in a second, Mike. I want to finish this thought. I was just looking at one of my thumbnails from a past video, and it grabbed my eye because it was about buyers. And the thumbnail said, buyers don't care. And I'm like, wow, that's a really good headline or a good thumbnail script because I was like, what? What do you mean buyers don't care? Listen, people, agents, friends, they don't care about us. They don't care. They care about themselves. What'd you have, Mike?
No, you're absolutely right. Engaging in a conversation and getting that motivation, it establishes trust, and that's where it's going to get you further along in the conversations. You have to establish trust. So,
That's
yeah,
so huge.
yeah,
Because what do they think? I mean, when I'm talking to someone on the phone, when they come into an open house, I'm a salesperson. And how do we feel about salespeople?
they're a pain. I mean, you
Ah,
had a picture yesterday on Facebook, which is the ultimate trust picture. You hold that little dog, but that's how you establish the trust. You engage in them common interest.
yeah. Mike Ferrante on Facebook, this puppy, guys, like hit pause if you're listening to this recording. Go find me on Facebook, send me a friend request, and look at the picture of this little pit bull husky mix puppy. Oh my God.
He's cute. Yeah, but you weren't very nice to my response. Told me to shut up.
All right, I don't want to get off track here. We keep these trainings to 20 minutes, around 20 minutes. But yeah, but the trust factor is huge. When we express interest, when we're engaged with other people, that is a trust builder. And that's so important. When you look at what sellers are looking for out of an agent, trust, integrity, those are two of the top five things, which is an awesome segue, almost like I planned this, to my secret um, number five. Okay, I'm gonna come back to number four. Uh, the whole idea of like what they want, what sellers want. They want to know how many homes have you sold in my neighborhood? How long have you been doing this? What kind of experience do you have? Are you the area expert? So look, for each of us, it's different. If someone said to me, "Hey, Mike, how many homes have you sold in Apple Valley Lake?" I would say zero. But I have someone for you. I'm going to refer you to Mike Pillow. I think Fred's down in Columbus, if I'm not mistaken. Feel free to chime in if I got that wrong, or Columbus, outside Columbus, Fred. But I can talk about my experience, my skills, but people don't want to be sold. So as a new agent, when someone says to you, "Well, how many homes have you sold in my area?" and the answer is zero, that's a script you have to work on. Now, one of the things we recommend, and I don't want to go on too many tangents here, but we talk about the team, we talk about the brokerage, we use the collective we, the royal we. Well, we've sold 100 this year alone. And while I personally haven't sold in your neighborhood, I take that same expertise, that same marketing plan, which I'm going to get to in a second, the same strategy, the same marketing package that we have with our brokerage, that box that comes with all the customized marketing materials. That's how I'm different, how I sell. But again, revert it back to asking questions. All right. So knowing how to answer those questions, we'll get into that in more detail in future videos, but the how many sales, how much experience do you have questions are really, really important. Another great conversation to have is the buy when you have to sell conversation, because not every agent is an expert at navigating that. Buyers and sellers have all kinds of crazy ideas about how that works. I'm going to find a house first, put an offer in, and then put my home on the market. Sounds like a great plan. Are you able to get financing in that scenario? Have you spoken to a lender yet? Oh, I'm sure I'm fine. I like to relate it back to personal stories. I thought I was fine about 14 or 15 years ago. Look, I'm a real estate expert. I've done the numbers. I'm sure I'm fine. So Brenda and I put an offer in on a house. We didn't get it. We got outbid. Then I spoke with the lender and said, "Hey, this guy was Jim. I'll never forget Jim. Great guy. Jim, just want to double check my numbers. Run this for me." "Sorry, Mike, you can't qualify." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, your income, it's irregular. You're trying to count a flip that you did last year. The banks won't count that as regular income. So I didn't qualify for this. I qualified for this." So important to have these conversations, to ask the questions, partially to build trust, like forget Zillow, call Pillow said, and partially to educate, to show our knowledge, to show our value, because frankly, the general public doesn't think we bring a lot of value. So the whole buying when you have a home to sell conversation, we all need to be experts at that. Here's another question that I get from sellers that we all have to be able to answer, and that is, how do you market my property? Isn't that really one of the main things they hire us for? Now, some sellers say, "I don't need an agent to market my property. I've got a marker and I can go to Home Depot and buy a for sale by owner sign and put a sign in my yard, put it on Zillow. I'm good." Zillow is the number one website. And they're not wrong. They can do it that way. But here's the question: how many buyers will you miss by having limited exposure? RE, my exclusive office listing video. Go check that one out. But seriously, the question of how do you market my property, if all you're saying is, well, I have the MLS, it's the most powerful tool out there. It is. And for now, it is. And who knows, maybe we're coming up on a national MLS. Raise your hands if you think that's a cool idea. I do. Not going to happen in our lifetimes, but hey, but how do you market? The question that I would ask if I were a seller, so jot this one down and say, how would I answer this? Besides the MLS and all the stuff that happens automatically, population to Zillow, Realtor.com, company websites, blah, 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 what else do you do? Can you answer that question? And if the answer is, well, nothing, then why wouldn't they just go with a commodity company, a flat fee company? Wouldn't they just go with the cheapest option? If all you're doing is doing some data entry and flipping a switch, what's your value then? I mean, maybe that is your value. And maybe your value is, look, you don't need all those other bells and whistles. Go with me because I do the bare minimum, but maybe I'll charge less. By the way, probably a good time for my little disclaimer here. We don't talk about specific commissions, but certainly strategies we can talk about. If you do have to say a number, if you're going to drop your remarks below, just say X. We don't want to hear numbers or percentages or anything, but I welcome that conversation. All right, so how do you market? Another question everybody has to be able to answer. And frankly, in any business, we're all marketers, right? All right, I'm going to give you number seven. I promised you seven today, and this goes back to price. Okay, almost like I planned this again. I sometimes I amaze myself. How much do you charge? Like when we role play, when we role play, how does this trip up agents, right? The first thing they hear is objection. Oh my God, they're going to beat me up on the commission. Mike, how much do you charge? Feel free to answer or not, but I'll keep going.
Well, Mike, let me ask you this. Are you concerned about what you're going to net from your sale, or are you concerned about the commission that you're going to pay out?
Yeah, that's a great answer because frankly, is that really an objection? We turn questions into objections in our heads. What does Tom Ferry call it? The drunk monkey, right? Did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I'm kind of sick, so I can't hardly talk in there. But I love Mike's answer, and the problem is, as you said, it's sometimes I just whatever they ask me, I say, oh,
Yeah.
whatever.
And we
Sometimes,
freeze. We
right?
we we
That's
turn a
me.
question into an objection
Yes,
and we're all,
yes,
you sound terrible. I hope you don't feel as bad as
yeah.
you sound. So rest your voice.
Worse. I feel
Yeah.
worse. Yeah.
Oh boy. So know how to answer that question and also express value. So I think as agents, we kind of freeze up and we say, oh my God, they want me to name a number. And then you name a number and they say, well, how about this lower number? And we get into this whole boxing match, as Mike and I call it, of, well, we haven't even talked about value yet. So I would try to shift the conversation because we have to answer the question, but I would still try to shift it in a gentle way from price to value. Totally understand you're asking me this question because you want to know what the costs are going to be. Would it be helpful if I ran a net sheet for you? This lists the common expenses and shows you what you would net in the transaction. And oh, by the way, here's my fee structure. And everybody's is probably different, right? I hope so, because if I remember correctly, there was some kind of lawsuit going on, and maybe we settled and had to change all the ways that we operate. But being able to answer that question is really important. And I think just blurting out a number is the wrong way to answer it. So practice those scripts. Join us on Saturdays and role play it. So those are my seven. And then I was sitting here going, oh, wait, I forgot one. So guess what? You get a bonus number eight. And I'm going to name a coach. You guys are all going to go on Google or ChatGPT or whatever you're using these days, Gemini, Claude. I'm using all of them. And I think it's important. So by the way, tangent alert. I was thinking to myself, hey, I use ChatGPT. I'm pretty proficient with it. Why do I need these other tools? Well, guess what? The more I'm learning, the more I'm realizing there is a reason for these other tools. And so I'm sure Mike's ears are perking up like, what? So Gemini is Google's AI tool. And wouldn't you, if you're trying to learn about, say, SEO, hey, I'm working on this project on YouTube, which is owned by Google, and I want to write a video description for my YouTube video that gets very high on SEO. Don't you think Gemini might be the best tool for that? Look, I'm not saying stop using ChatGPT and all that, but now I'm finding I'm having more and more windows open on my computer, including Claude, which is Claude frickin' rocks. All right. So anyway, you guys are all going to Google ChatGPT. Zan Morris. I hope Zan is still alive. He's a coach that I saw, a speaker I saw many, many years ago. And he had this presentation he called the perfect listing presentation. And I still refer back to it even today because he was ahead of his time. And he talks about, and now all the coaches do it, the pre-listing package. Okay, so in addition to having a written marketing plan, which I forgot to mention on the marketing side, don't just talk about it, have a written marketing plan. Here is what I do to market your property. Have a written pre-listing package. Okay, this is something that I haven't done for years, and I'm beginning to do it on virtually every listing opportunity I have. Look, sometimes I'm like on the phone and I say, I'll come over right now. And of course, I can't put together my pre-listing package customized to that listing, but I carry them around in my truck now. But the pre-listing package, it pre-sells you. It shows how prepared you are. And especially when you use tools to customize it for that seller, for that property, it's powerful. Wow, this agent has already done all this research on my property. Like my friend Mike says, you become their agent before they even realize that you're their agent. The pre-listing package, just go online. All the coaches teach it now. I've got my Claude AI set up to help me generate a pre-listing package. One of the lessons I've learned, though, is that I had my pre-listing package set up to talk a little too much about price. And I actually had a seller cancel with me because they didn't like the price that got produced in my pre-listing package. Now, again, I haven't even seen the property yet. My coach, Coach Fred, what's up, Fred, says that we shouldn't even include comps in our pre-listing package. I'm still debating that in my head, Fred, because I think that showing the comps could still be valuable. You know, they can do their own research. I hope that they go on Zillow and say, well, what about this house? What about this house? And I go, exactly. I looked at that one and here's why it's not a good comparable for your house. Or exactly, this one's perfect. But can you see that it's 500 square feet larger than yours? Very similar, but smaller. Yours is smaller. So put together a pre-listing package for every single listing appointment that you have and deliver it to the seller prior to your appointment. Now, Zan, and I got to look it up after this session and see if he's still around, but he even said, deliver it to their work with helium balloons on it. You're like, what? What's he talking about? So he described this. I saw him in person presenting this. He said, look, how will you stand out if this package gets delivered by a courier, maybe a box, an big envelope, and someone comes parading through the office with a helium balloon or balloons or ribbons or whatever and saying, you know, package for Grant. And then Grant, you know, the coworkers come over, gosh, who sent you that? What's the answer? I remember Zan saying this like it was yesterday. Oh, this is from my realtor. How do you like that? All right, guys, that's what I have for you today. So I gave you 8 secrets, my 8 favorite secrets. That's not all of them. I still have more secrets. So if you want to hit me up and talk about secrets, talk about the team, talk about, you know, whatever, real estate, hit me up, Mike at 21mike.com. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that subscribe button. If you want a topic covered, because we're done with 5 weeks of scripts now, if you want a topic covered, just email me and say, Mike, I really want to hear more about this. We'll be happy to do it. So have a great week, everybody. And it's Mike at 21mike.com if you need me.